We were touching on China. Where do you see China going? And you can't help thinking China without thinking the United States. So let me turn it around a little bit. Where do you see the United States economy going in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, they're recovering.
Are they really?
More slowly than most people would like, but certainly on the industrial production side, which we cater to, because we sell in our zinc business, for example, the zinc that's made in Trail, we sell to industrial end users in the U.S., the auto plants, steel companies, and so we have a good sort of leading indicator of how they're doing. And that part of the recovery is pretty good. The consumer, still very weak. But, eventually the U.S., it's a very resilient economy. They will come back. They've got huge debts to deal with, and as Canada did 20 years ago as well, and we dealt with it, and now Canada's in a very strong position. In terms of China, you know what I do with China? China has it's a command economy, and they produce 5-year plans. They're currently working on their 12th 5-year plan. I carry a copy of it around. I've got it reduced into a business card size. I got both sides. And if anybody wants to know what's going to happen in China, I just pull this out and I read it, because this is something you can bet on. If you look back at the other 5-year plans, if they said they were going to do something, they do it.
That's fascinating.
And so, for example, 200,000 kilometers in power transmission lines. They're going to build that in the next 5 years. That would more than replace all the transmission lines in all of Canada. They're going to build 36 million housing units. All of Canada has only 12 million. They're going to build a whole new metropolitan Vancouver every month for the next 15 years. Every month. That's what they're doing. It's extraordinary. And you really have to go and see it to believe it.
Yeah, no, I was there a few years ago, and it's amazing. At that time, they were planning, as you say, to build cities the size of Vancouver in the way that we would determine a suburb.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and doing it right across the country. They've developed the eastern seaboard quite heavily, but there's still the interior provinces and the western provinces. A lot of projects have been announced. So we have faith in the macro trend that trend's going to continue. It will always be cyclical. There'll be ebbs and flows, and when you see that, the Western media, like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, The Economist, these kind of leading publications will jump on it and say, it's all over in China. I don't think so. Well, you got 1.3 billion people there. They're working awfully hard to get a better life. They've had a taste of it. They can see it on their cell phones. I think that trend's going to keep going.
And how do we benefit from that?
Well, at least from Teck's point of view and British Columbia's point of view, we're well positioned to supply the commodities that are a big part of the lifestyle that they're building. So for our copper from Highland Valley, our zinc from Trail, our coal from the Elk Valley, all of those are key commodities that China needs. So we're expanding, and with that we have to work with our railway partners, with the ports, Westshore, Neptune here, Prince Rupert, the Ridley terminals. All of this is part of that. And we talk about the gateway to the Pacific. That's real, and it's working.
So where do you see the biggest growth coming from other than China? What skills should our future leaders be working on?
Well, beyond China, there's the rest of the emerging economies, and you could make a long list, but India's key, Brazil, Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, and so on. Large populations and much higher growth rates. In fact, leading economists defined it this way. Last year was the first year that half of global GDP came from developed countries like Canada, the U.S., UK, and so on, half from emerging markets. But the half from developed countries, they're growing at 2% a year. The emerging markets are growing at 6% a year. So if you roll the clock forward 10 years and just do the math, by that stage, 60% will be coming from, China, India, Brazil, and so on. And so I think that businesses need to position themselves to take advantage of that trend.
How do you do that?
Well, to see what kind of needs and products that they're going to want, and it's the whole spectrum from telecommunications and cell phones to services. They're advancing, could be healthcare, could be any kind of consumer product. There's going to be a shift over time in China in particular from fixed asset investment where the government's building infrastructure to consumption. And for example, in the 5-year plan, in my little card here, it says that they are going to the minimum wage, and we couldn't do this in Canada or the U.S., but the minimum wage is going to increase 13% every year. part of the reason for that is to get more money into the hands of consumers to get their economy to have more consumption. And so they're pretty smart about what they're doing.
Henry Ford said his people had to be able to afford to buy the product they made.
It's exactly that, Bill. It's exactly that. We've been through it ourselves, and they're doing the same.
But isn't it interesting? I mean, in China, I've said a number of times, they can do pretty much what they want. I mean, the government doesn't have to go to hearings. It doesn't have to go out, and hear from the neighbors. If it decides it wants to build an Olympics, it just does it. If it decides it wants to build a pipeline, it just does it.
Yeah, and that is an advantage economically. We go back to the global financial crisis, and when people were talking about stimulus programs, it took a long time for North America or Western Europe countries to make a decision. China announced their stimulus program, and it started the next minute, like literally
Yeah.
announcement, and then boom, it goes, and they have the ability to do that.
But how do you compete with that?
It's tough. It's tough. I think in the end, there's still great strengths to democratic systems in terms of getting appropriate allocation of resources. Sometimes when governments have that authority, unchallenged authority to just allocate resources, there's misallocation. The classic stories of building the road to nowhere or whatever,
Bridge to nowhere.
That isn't really going to be used and that sort of thing. Whereas in Western society, that's less likely to occur.
We've talked about China. We've talked about the United States. Where do you see Europe, particularly Greece and Spain and Italy? Where do you see their short-term future?
Well, it's a tough call. I mean, there's so many experts working on these issues, and I don't pretend to be one of those, but I kind of simplify a lot of these things into one kind of basic economic law, and that is if you don't produce, you can't consume. And if you and I, Bill, if we consumed more than we produced, if we spent more money than we made, it'd catch up with us pretty quickly. We can't do it for very long. And some of the countries, including the ones that you just named, have been doing that. They've been consuming more than they produce for a long time. And the long-term answer to that is to reverse that. What you need is leadership at the top that's willing to tell the people the truth about that and convince them that that's the way you got to go.
More with Don Lindsay, President and CEO of Teck Resources Limited, right after the news headlines next. Talking with Don Lindsay, President and CEO of Teck Resources Limited. This is in a series of conversations with chief executive officers and executives around the province, trying to find out what makes them tick, what makes them successful, what makes them leaders. And I'm going to go to the part of the program that I've called my Vanity Fair segment, a little bit personal stuff. First of all, what do you do to unwind? You look like you're in terrific shape.
I try and stay fit, and running is the most convenient because if you're traveling, most hotels have a gym of some sort. So I just ran the Vancouver Sun Run with my kids, a week or so ago, and we do that every year. But mostly I'm either at work or with my family. These are the sort of the two things I do. I don't have.
You've got three growing kids.
I have three growing kids. Skiing. We're a skiing family, so. In fact, one of my sisters lives at Whistler, and she's been there for 20 years. So we kind of have that as a destination, and I have friends and family that come and visit quite a bit. So we kind of revolve on that. In the summer, canoeing. My biggest vacation of the year for about 15 years was a whitewater canoe trip with my father, because I have 5 sisters. So dad and son to go out and just be together for a bit was always a good thing. And so we did a lot of the big rivers in northern Canada, and that was a fantastic sort of phase of life as well.
So you do have some balance in your life?
Probably not what most people would consider balance, but there's some, yeah. It could be more balance, that's for sure.
Are you a reader?
Well, I'm reading enormous volumes related to work. I'm not reading books. I've got a stack of books that I'd love to read, and I can't say that I'm really getting to it very well. So, is
there one that you'd really like to get to?
It would be hard to choose that. I mean, I just read Neil Ferguson's, Civilization, the West and the Rest, because he was a guest speaker that we had here in town a couple of weeks ago. I know you had on a list of favorite books, and you know what my answer is on favorite books? It really is the Robert Munch books and Michael Marchenko, the illustrator, and Paper Bag Princess or Love You Forever, because that's just the phase of life I've been in.
Been reading to your kids,
and that's and these books are fantastic. I don't know if you know them. Like, we all grew up with Dr. Seuss,
yes,
and we still use the Dr. Seuss books too. But the Robert Munch books, all of them have some sort of a story or a life lesson in there. And those two in particular are my favorites.
If you could have dinner with any 4 people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
Well, I started thinking about that one, and there's several answers. So the first answer was this might be a little bit traditional, but these are, pretty famous people who did extraordinary things. And so I had on my list Winston Churchill, who, for whatever reason, he was a favorite of my parents, and so I learned a bit about him growing up. Nelson Mandela, who I had quite a close connection with South Africa for several years earlier in my career, and I almost had dinner with him. I attended events where he was speaker, but I used to host this dinner in Toronto when I lived there for the mining industry. It was in the Toronto Club Black Tie Fair, and we'd have a guest speaker. And in 2004, Nelson Mandela agreed to be my guest speaker.
Wow.
And this was going to be a huge coup, and CEOs from all over the world come. It's not a big event, it's an exclusive event, sort of 100 people. And then a month before, his doctor said that he just couldn't travel. But you know what he did? He sent his son-in-law, Sir Sam Jonah, who in himself, he was the CEO of Ashanti Gold in Ghana. And Sir Sam read out a note from Nelson Mandela at our dinner, so that was kind of fun. And then I would add to that Abraham Lincoln. I did a project on Abraham Lincoln in grade 7. And I don't know why I did it. It wasn't even sort of part of the curriculum. I got interested in him, and I just think, the whole, the history of the U.S. and the Civil War and keeping the country united and abolishing slavery, some of these accomplishments, so in today's standards, we look back, that was a really notable phase of history, and he played a huge role. And Mother Teresa, one of my daughters just did an essay on her, and so digging into that. And, if you had those 4 at the table, that would be quite something. That
would be quite a dinner.
I got another list of 4 if you want. I mean,
sure.
For the Canucks, I'm as passionate as a lot of the people in our company office, but Henrik and Daniel, maybe if they did the Sedin line with Alex Burrows and maybe Luongo or Kessler. Actually, when I go to the games, I wear a Kessler sweater because the whole when he won the two-way player award last year, I'm a big believer in that. But you could have 4 of those guys together.
Now that's interesting. You get rid of the suit and tie.
Yeah.
And you wear a team jersey.
Oh yeah, no, my whole family, we've all got a jersey. One's Luongo. We got 2 Daniel Sedins. I wear Kessler, and we must have Henrik. I guess we got another Sedin. Yeah, so we all got.
Sedins are pretty special people, aren't they?
Yeah, I'll tell you how special they are. I mean, we all know they're special, but I do a lot of work with the Children's Hospital. Yeah. I'm chair of the campaign there, and these guys, we never asked them for a gift. They approached us. Like most people, I'm out there cultivating relationships. It takes years to get $1 million gift. They called us and volunteered. They wanted to give $1.5 million. And this is for a hockey player that only works for a certain phase of their life. They're going to be 32 years old. The career isn't until you're 65. This is a big commitment. And then they said they didn't want to publicize it. We had to convince them to let us announce this kind of gift. And they already put so much time into it that I'm just enormously impressed with those 2 guys with the contribution that they made.
That's really interesting because, certainly the word did get out that they'd contributed $1.5 million, but you're telling me they didn't want.
They initially wanted to be anonymous, and they graciously accepted because, in society, imagine if everybody was anonymous, then the culture of giving back wouldn't be as strong. People would not have to do as much. And I think you need role models out there where you can see it's expected that, if you're successful in society, giving back is just part of life and something you should do, and we value that. And so for the Sedins to do that, I think was a really valuable thing for society. I really admire them.
Don Lindsay, I really enjoyed meeting you. You learn something every day when you're doing a show like this. But we've learned lots today, and I think your story about the Sedins is a terrific way to end it.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Pleasure.